sure that there's probably some questions floating in your head. The questions, we're going to do a 10-minute panel. That probably won't be enough time, but we'll try to get some good questions in. Not only specifically about the projects and the lessons that they presented, but if you have any questions around negotiating, students of different levels and different abilities, that's really what we wanted this section to be about. So again, my section was really about what does these DOKs 1 through 3 look like? How does it feel? How do I know when I'm presenting to my students at different levels? This section was about how to present it, and we really want everyone to leave knowing and understanding that no matter what your students' abilities are, you can present different depths of knowledge to them. So do not think that because someone is reading at a lower level that you can only present DOK 1 or DOK 2 to them. And so hopefully you were able to glean that out of what they said. And if there's any specific questions about how to do that, or if you have maybe a case study that you want to, get some ideas from other people. And then also, you all are teachers. We just happen to be the ones who are presenting. So if you have something also to say, or if you have an example of something that you did that gets to multiple levels for multiple students, you're welcome to also do that. So we're going to push it to you now. Questions, comments, thoughts?
I have one question. The one thing I did not notice in presentations is preparing students for their technical skills like typing and using the technology. How do you incorporate that, or would you?
Oh, I definitely try to, because the new GED and the new NEDP are both on the computer. So for mine, the requirement for the project was that it be typed. So you see it's typed. And also they had a lot of time in class to work with laptops that we have, and they did most of their research online. So.
Okay.
Yeah.
My question is a little packed. So these are really great strategies, and I feel like I'm going to be able to go back and implement these strategies in my classroom. But I'm wondering, how do you tailor these strategies to those students who cannot access the academic material because they are too emotionally withdrawn? And so, I feel like this is a great strategy, and I consider myself a great teacher. However, when I stand in front of my classroom of 10 students who, child's father didn't come and pick the child up so they can get to school, you just made it to school, it's 1 o'clock, school ends at 3. How, and I planned my butt off, right? I created the project, I stapled pages, I did everything, but then my student comes in and it's like, Ms. Smith, I can't do it today. How do you tailor this for that environment?
Oh, sure. I mean, I know exactly how you feel, because in this particular class where I did this project, I had one student who's a long-term student who is a very emotional student who has a lot of issues outside of class and some mental health issues, so sometimes has a lot of trouble both working in groups and also coming to class ready to do work. So I struggle with that. I struggle with it. I'm not the best. That's one of the things that I'm working on. But what I found was effective for this was just that trying to tie it back to things that they noticed in their own communities that really bothered them. So even the students who hadn't been active or engaged in class at all really got a chance with this project. And I didn't think this would happen, but it did, that they were like, wow, this is really interesting. This really does make a difference if you just really get to the points about okay, maybe it doesn't seem important that you vote in this election, but this person will literally be one of the people who helps decide if there's a bus stop outside of your house and things like that. And giving them the tools to say this does impact stuff outside of this classroom. It's not just for me that you're doing this. So projects help do that.
I also think that when you free up time for the students to be either working on their own or in pairs or something, if they're doing that graphic organizer, it really gives the teacher time to go around, and to the student who might be sitting there doing nothing. Or I have students that just freeze up when they see a page of words, and I can actually spend even a few minutes with them saying, well, what does the first sentence say? And then they tell me. And I say, see, that's what goes in that box, you can do this. So you are freeing yourself up with a little more time to go around and engage the people who aren't so engaged.
Yeah, and just adding on to that, just thinking about like when I have something that's really weighing on my mind and stressing me out, like sometimes doing work really helps, like forget about that and like get away from that. So sometimes when students are really getting down, I say like, why don't you use this as a distraction? Just throw yourself into this. Like I know that you're hungry, like your kid is really sick, like all of these really serious, actual, like real world problems, but like maybe just take this hour just for yourself to spend just with yourself thinking about something totally unrelated to that. So.
Can I add to that? When I ran an adult ed program, our teachers used to allow for journaling at the beginning of the class to allow students an opportunity to write about what had been transpiring in their lives. And then they had an opportunity to reflect on it and talk about it, and then move forward with the base lesson. It was really wonderful. You should see the journals that they were able to derive together, and it was really a wonderful bonding session for the students, because everybody's dealing with something, and sometimes we're not always aware of that, but they were able to advise and counsel and work with one another to deal with whatever the issue was, and then move forward. So I just wanted to share that.
Yeah, I mean, I could add to that as well. I mean, I go to the extent to like, hey, you showed up today. I'm happy you showed up. Yeah, let them know that they're welcome here, and whatever problems there, try to leave it at the door type of thing, and then try to get them like engaged, get them focused on what they're doing from there. And again, just as an escape route, they came through your door. I mean, that's the first step that they came. So they left that emotion. They find they're confiding in you, showing that that they're showing up. All this stuff could have happened beforehand, and then they don't show up that day. But knowing that they came that day, be it late, whatever may happen, they showed up and look, I'm glad you came here. This is what I had planned for you today. Can you engage in this and like you said, forget about what's outside those doors.
I find that what's helpful to me is that every 2 or 3 weeks I have a one-on-one with every student in my class.
That's good.
And they're working on that workout, and then we'll get tutors who will difficult.
There's a question on the back.
Oh, I just had a comment about, I've gotten so much out of today, and I'm so impressed by the amount of thought you put into scaffolding exercises. So the thing I was talking about earlier about the time savers, to kind of get people to the task that you really want them to think about. So Jamie, you did that with the acting out in 3 minutes, some kind of task on evaluating evidence. So instead of taking somebody through a 15-minute article with varying levels of reading, you got the information in 3 minutes out there, and then they could focus on the evidence itself. And you did that with the paragraphs. So instead of requesting somebody to compose a paragraph, it takes a lot of thinking, you gave them the language and then had them just put in the evidence. So I mean, that kind of thoughtfulness about how you isolate a task, and that's the same with the tape, Megan, and you're thinking about this and not until you pass through this can you go on. I mean, this is incredible, and it's a good lesson for us, and I can take that back to a lot of teachers about how you structure an activity. So,
Okay.
One thing that I would add to that around DOK critical thinking is that we have to release ourselves from the idea that we have all of the knowledge. Because if it is true that we have all of the knowledge, and it is only in that very precise way, like Alicia was saying, that we can get that knowledge, is they must write a paragraph that says these 4 things, and if they don't say these 4 things, or if it doesn't have this exact comma in this exact place and it is incorrect, if we don't move away from that, our students will never move away from it. And our students will think that it's only prescriptive, and life is prescriptive, and if I don't have this exact format or this exact way of doing it, then I am wrong, so why try? You cannot think if you don't think you should think. So what a lot of these types of pieces help to do is it helps to release the teachers from the idea that you have to be very prescriptive and you have to read these 3 articles to then understand what an argument looks like. So, you know, that's one challenge also I'd like to present to everyone, is knowing and understanding that the scaffolding and the projects and things of that nature helps our students to think, and it actually takes away a lot from the teacher, a lot. And critical thinking actually demands that of us, to not answer every question. Ask yourself if there's a way that you can get the answer from someone else.
I was gonna say, that kind of rings true with all subjects aside from mathematics though, because like it is very, you know, structured. There is no subjectivity. Basically, it's very, if you don't, 1 + 1 will always be 2. There's no way around that. So you have to kind of, what I try to do, and I'm thinking about the scaffolding piece now, because I always try to break it down into like 4 steps or less. And I said, if you can get through these 4 steps, you can solve any problem no matter what it looks like. So even with equations, like the first thing you gotta do, if the distributed property is there, you do it. I even made like a little decision tree and we kind of go down. So for the visual people, it's like after distributed property, combine like terms and all that thing. But if you don't do it that way, you're good. It is gonna be wrong. So like, I do have to still try to find a way to balance both of the pieces because it is very prescriptive. If you do addition instead of subtraction, you're gonna get the wrong answer.
You can also, like, I totally agree with that. Like, in math, it can sometimes seem limiting, but, like, just remember that in social studies, there's totally wrong answers, too. There's definitely wrong. And I think sometimes we get into, like, oh, yeah, great, nice try, like, kind of, which is good. Like, you want to do that. But also, like, you can be like, no, that's wrong. That's, like, that does.
One thing I emphasize, because a lot of them, they think that because they got the wrong answer, they might have gotten 3 out of the 4 steps correct.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
I'm saying you did everything right, but look what you did.
Exactly.
You did +1 instead of -1. And they're like, oh, man. Yeah. I said, so don't get mad. Just, I understand when you get the wrong answer, it is the wrong answer, but don't feel as though you're that far away from the right answer. So it's like once you kind of be able to put it into those different steps, you can identify which step they're having the most problems with, and then we can do a lot of different examples to kind of get them through that too. But one thing I have to always try to do is kind of boost them by letting them know that, yeah, you got the wrong answer, but you were like one
Really
step away. It was so
Yeah.
close.
Yeah.
But you don't really see that because with the multiple choice, like if you, they will purposely put a different answer in there. That means you did it 1 step incorrectly. So I'm always, you have to kind of.
Well,
Yeah.
I think,
with math, oh, I'm sorry.
Well, I was just thinking, with the critical thinking piece, though, in that is if they can see it and explain to you why that choice is wrong. You know, even though they got it wrong that day, which doesn't matter because that same problem's not going to be on the test, but if they can explain to you why that answer is wrong, that's a huge amount of critical thinking, and that's a great way for them to do to accomplish something with that problem.
Yeah, and that's the piece. So though there is a way to add, the students need to get to the point that they understand why they're adding. I am pretty sure that one of our Sparks trainings will be math. It might be called math functions or something like that. Anyone who has any desire to talk about math, please come to that training. It isn't, we haven't decided on a date yet, but it is a system where the students are given problems and they are constantly figuring out how they got to the answer. And that's what they do all the time. You don't tell them one single time how to add a decimal. You never, ever, ever say line the decimal up. Never once do you say that in a class. What? You know, how does that work, right? Come to the training and you'll find out.